Hello, Oakley.
Hello, Omar.
Good to see you. This is
Great to see you.
quite the week
Totes.
to check in. Hello, Marilyn, Dana, Denise, Brian. Thank you all for joining us. So we're kicking off a new series. What's the new series, Oakley?
This new series is all about the little things, Omar.
Nice.
The little things.
When you suggested that as the topic, I was so excited because for gthx, one of the things that we talk about is don't start small, start smallest. And I think with all the big things happening this week, which I can feel like right here, it's been very like prominent. I'm like, where's the country? It's right here. I can feel it.
Right between my shoulder blades.
I thought, and it was so perfect that really just even focusing on something as simple and as little as the breath is amazing. So totally excited to jump into this and want to hear from folks how you're feeling at this moment. Where are you feeling this moment? I showed you mine. I'm feeling it sort of in my sort of lower, I don't even know what area of that body, like lower back. That's where I'm feeling this moment.
Fellow countrymen and countrywomen, tell us where you're at.
Don't be shy.
Don't be
shy. Access your mic. Check in on comments or chat.
Welcome.
We're all good. Safe place.
Totes safe place.
Marilyn, I see a big smile on your face. Dana, sharing it in your shoulders.
Belly. All right. Yeah, totally. In the gut, right?
In my legs.
Mm.
Right on. Right on.
My chest from Denise. Marilyn?
I don't really have any feelings right now. It doesn't affect me.
All right. No feelings. Wow.
Well, no feelings that are hurting in my body anywhere, regarding the bad week or the good week or whatever. I choose to just be happy, and that's my choice. I can't control it.
Yeah.
So let it go.
Marilyn, I resonate with you. I have to be honest. I have had some back twinges, but honestly, I've been taking most of my energy out on my brand new toy called my Peloton. This is not a plug. I do not have stock. I do not get a cut if you buy one from this plug. But man, I've just been moving a lot of energy and just staying super grounded. And that is what we're talking about this week, right? Is the little things like moving our body, breathing, choosing happiness just because, but everything's welcome here, obviously.
Hi, Teresa. Great to see you again. We're just doing a quick check-in on how you're feeling. Oh, feel free to access your mic. Almost.
Little blue dots up in the right-hand corner.
Well, there we go, Teresa.
Is that perfect? Okay? Yeah. Okay. I couldn't get it on my laptop, so I'm on my iPhone. I've never done it on the iPhone before.
Oh, nice.
So yes. No, I'm doing well. Unfortunately, we had a death in family the last couple of weeks, but things are, we're going. We're going forward.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
All the more to put things in perspective, right? I think that's the sort of thing about this particular moment where there are so many things swirling around, and sort of no matter which side of the kind of political spectrum you are or you're not, that this moment will sort of come and go. I was part of a healing circle of men earlier this week, and there were 3 other men. They were all in their 70s, and one gentleman shared that he was feeling a lot of angst about the Vietnam War, and even though he could have gotten a student deferment on the draft, he just didn't feel like he wanted to exercise that privilege, and it sort of created a lot of stress for him. And then there was another guy who's in Texas and wanted to join, but couldn't because he had a physical disability. And so it was fascinating to hear these two men who probably in the 70s might have been on opposite sides of a protest. And here they were in this moment in a men's healing circle and just being able to bear witness to each other as fellow human beings. And so I think we can get caught up in these moments. And I just shared that observation with them, and they hadn't even really heard it in that way as they shared their own stories. And so I think this is partly why I love this Zoomcast, is just by being witness and hearing each other share, we're actually just sort of becoming more present to the moment. And it's a beautiful place to be, no matter sort of the wackiness that's happening around us.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. So let's just take a moment and take a breath together. Just kind of drop in, just deep inhale, exhale. And just notice, just come back. Don't make it too precious. And just notice what shifts for you just after that breath.
That was amazing. I just noticed all of a sudden my neck just sort of flattened up a little bit, and pulled, and my jaw sort of tucked in a little bit. And I was like, ooh, that pain I just was feeling in my back went away. Maybe it's not the politics, it's just how I'm sitting.
So good. Did anyone else notice this subtle or not so subtle shift just from a couple breaths?
No.
I noticed that I just got connected to everybody here. You know, I just really realized, like, oh, hi. Hi. I kind of felt you all suddenly in my heart in a different way. So this is something we're going to be talking about for the entirety of our class. And this is the lead in this month for the little things, is the breath. And the breath, man, I hope it doesn't become a taboo tool. I swear, everybody throws it around right now. The breath, the breath, the breath, the breath, the breath, the breath. There's a reason for that, because it's so accessible and easy, and it's so powerful. So we're talking about the little things. We've got the backdrop of the big things, sort of the sweeping blue and red swirling behind us, amongst, a global pandemic, amongst so many things, amongst the holidays, etc. And there's nothing to fix. There's nothing to do. There's just the responsibility for us to stay true to who we are. Right. And the breath, for me, the reason I throw it out as one of my favorite tools onto the table is because inside each one of us is everything. Every answer, every molecule of light, every expanse, every question, it all exists. We're not broken human beings, right? We're full, whole, and complete. And so the breath brings us back to that foundation. The breath brings us back to our feet on the ground. And once we're present with who we actually are, the present moment can handle anything, right? In the present moment, we can manage our lives. We can thrive in our lives. So the breath is that moment in space and time that redirects and brings us right back to center, right back to presence. And it's a habit, right? It's a habit some of us don't have. It's a habit some of us do have. And when I was really learning about this, I really consciously decided to develop this habit. And it started with the question, how am I breathing right now? And I would just notice, I get a phone call from someone that I was nervous or scared about or intimidated by, and I would notice my breath. But I was training that in myself, right? So I was saying, all right, I really want to be able to breathe through my life and have myself be really present to it. I was really committed to being present to my life. So I began to train this, and it starts with just noticing. which is our favorite thing, is just noticing.
Well, and I love that you started off talking about habit up front. And the little things, to me, is it's better to take a bunch of small steps than trying to take big leaps. And the science on habits, if anybody's read BJ Fogg's book on tiny habits, it's all about reminders, routines, and rewards. It's the 3 R's. And so when you can remind yourself, well, what's the habit that I want to adopt? And it's really about anchoring it to some kind of trigger. So like Oakley, the trigger she mentioned was a phone call. Like, okay, when I pick up the phone, which nowadays we often pick up our phone. So it's a great reminder. If like every time I pick up the phone, that's going to be my reminder to check in on my breath. Right. And then the routine is, well, what is it you're actually doing? And so if the trigger is picking up my phone, check my breath. And the reward is to actually celebrate that you did it, right? And the little things that we can celebrate allows us to celebrate the big things. And that to me is that the breath is something that literally connects us from our physiology to sort of like our metaphysics. Like it physiologically changes us. But I also just love that the word spirit in Latin is spiritus, which means to breathe. And so even the ancients were like, who maybe didn't know the physiological or the neuroscience of it, were like, yo, you want to be spiritual? Breathe. That was it. Like, I was like, yes, come on, let's do that.
Good. It's so good, Omar. And, you know, I love the reward there, right? Like the reward is that we did it. And I really saw 2 paths in my life, and I had practiced one of them very well. Right. And that was not feeling super present, feeling a little overwhelmed or stressed, being distracted by what was happening around me, and picking up the phone in the middle of that. And the impact of that. Now, there's layers of impact. So the impact immediately on the person who's calling is obvious. I'm not present. I'm stressed. I'm sort of making them wrong for calling me. Like, how does that happen? Yeah, like, oh, you're so annoying. How could you call me? Like, I'm in the middle of so much. Like, well, it's not anyone's fault, right? So I have sort of this like already established attitude that isn't that open to what's available right there in the phone call. And I'm not present and I'm managing it. So then I have this other impact, this other layer on myself, because now I'm on a phone call that is adding to the stress and overwhelm because of my choice. So then I get off the phone call, and how does the next hour go, you guys? Like, we've all been there. You know, we're digging ourselves out of that feeling for the rest of the day, and everything else is just sort of like the resistance to the snowball effect. Right? So I was like, okay, cool. I've practiced path A right over there. I get what the impact is. I answer to it. My loved ones answer to it. My colleagues answer to it. Not that cool. It's kind of an experience of life that was more about, you know, surviving than thriving, right? And so it kind of blew my mind that I could shift the entirety of my daily experience through a breath. And I was like, okay, if that's what it's going to take for me to actually shift and get onto a different path and answer to a totally different impact and create something totally different, so that at the end of my day, I've actually felt tremendously empowered, accomplished, deeply connected. I mean, that is my life experience. Like, I'm not making this up. You know, that's not a dream I have. It's a dream I had, and now I'm in it. I live it, and I've been living it for a long time. You know, so it is so automatic. If I have a phone call scheduled or my phone rings, I disconnect from everything that's happening, and I take a really deep breath. I get connected with my heart. I get present with whatever number is coming up or whatever, and I'm there. And even if that's like, I can't talk right now. I did that to my brother the other day. I was like, hi, how are you? He was like, I'm great. We just drove to here and we're renting this house. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. hey, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back in an hour? He was like, yeah, sure. Versus like, hey, oh my, okay, I really can't talk right now, but I just picked up, you know, that thing that we all do to like people we love. It's great, you know? So my relationships grew. This is all from a breath, everybody. Like, I'm making this up, right? So
we're going to do a
two-pack.
spot check. All right, everybody.
Inhale, exhale. So let's do it. Just take a moment. Just inhale again. And then just exhale. That little space that we enter just from the inhale and the exhale, that's like the juiciest, energetic embodiment of your worth, right? Like you just breathing into who you are, so enough in the world. There's nothing more. That's just like, it's so full and enough because we are so full and abundant in our being. So you just inhale into it, exhale into it, and then move into action. It's like,
I just heard this little clip that Thich Nhat Hanh said that enlightenment is like a toothache. And when we have a toothache, we really appreciate it when we don't have one. And so like part of the purpose of enlightenment or any of these practices is to really just to appreciate the ordinary, the everyday, the what is in this moment. And so what is more ordinary than a breath, right? We actually did the math and it's in our app, I think, of like how many breaths we take in a day, in a life.
oh yeah, I love that.
And there's a lot, we take so many breaths. And so just giving ourselves a little bit of intentionality to it, then all of a sudden it becomes like, wow, okay, this is a very special thing. Like I'm always shocked when I get a cold and like I can't breathe. And I'm like, oh my God, I want my breath. Like if I could just take a breath, I'd be so happy, right? And yet when we can do it, we so easily forget it, you know, and then that's when we take things for granted. And so when we have these sort of practices, and this goes to the heart of noticing, and the definition that we have at gthx is that gratitude makes visible what we value, and what we take for granted, we make invisible. And so by pausing, or any given moment, it's not about right or wrong, like, oh, this is visible and therefore it is good, and this is invisible and therefore it's bad. It's just like, no, it's just what it is in any given moment. Oh, I'm conscious of my breath. Oh, I am not conscious of my breath. You know, and as opposed to like judging yourself of like, oh, dude, I just nailed that breath. Oh my God. You know, because I feel like when I first started getting into meditation, you know, I was like, okay, I'm going to knock out these 20 minutes, boom, you know, and like, I just was like a machine. And you know what? It was like, I did it every day, twice a day for 6 months. And at the end of it, I was like, I don't actually feel any better. Like, I was like, I mean, because I treated it like just something that you're supposed to do. And so I think part of it is a task.
Yeah.
Right. And if I had actually just appreciated maybe 3 breaths in my entire day, it would have probably been better than the 40 minutes of my very rigid meditation. I don't know.
I mean, that's how I was trained. My teachers and mentors, they're like quality over quantity, you know, because I was growing up in that age where Vipassana meditation was, you know, coming out of the 60s was huge, moving into the 80s. People were still like, you know, it was the thing. And it was an hour in the morning and an hour in the night. Right. And if you didn't do 60 minutes twice a day, like you weren't doing it. Now that's a really high standard for, you know, people in our society today. And it was like quality over quantity, which totally shifted I had that too, right? Which totally shifted my rigidity over like, I've got to get it. And it was timed. And if it was 19 minutes and not 20, I didn't really do it. You know, that whole thing. And then I started paying attention to the moments where in that 20 minutes, I really gave myself to being present to what I was up to, you know, either the breath or receiving, you know, sort of a visualization or whatnot. And I really learned what quality felt like in those moments. And that's why I think that one breath, if we can really harness our attention and our focus and just like turn it all over inside to that one inhale and exhale, boom, we've shifted.
You were talking about a school that you're in and they were training you in this practice. Can you, because part of what the little things is about is how we sort of adopt these daily practices. And so maybe if you could just, I'd love to hear what that transition was from being in a place that encourages it, like it fosters this practice because everybody's doing it. There's a clear method to it. And then going home. And what does that sort of transition look like in terms of actually making it a habit where there isn't somebody looking over your shoulder and you don't have that group sort of cohesion to support you?
Yeah, and that accountability. Right. Totally. The bigger schooling of it really created awareness around it for me. So that was really powerful. It also created discipline. You know, like I learned how to sit through discomfort by sitting for long periods of time. But the number one rule of coming home from a place like that, and really just practicing on my own, was about success, right? We never want to set ourselves up for failure, especially related to our spiritual practice, right? So if you authentically don't have 20 minutes in the morning because you've never created 20 minutes before in your life, and that just seems like so overwhelming, then don't create 20 minutes. Look at your life and be honest with yourself. Is it 2 minutes? Right? And what are we committed to? So the commitment has to be the biggest thing. That's the driving force. It's not the practice, right? The commitment is, it really doesn't work for me to show up like a jerk on the phone, right? So I really want to have the impact and the experience of love and deep connection. That's what I'm committed to in my life. So therefore, if I am going to practice that, and that's going to take 5 minutes every day, you know, for the next 60 days or 30 days, if 5 minutes is really what I have, then the commitment becomes easy because I'm living into this greater vision. And I've made it so that I can be successful in my commitment because it fits with my life.
I love that in grad school, totally different world, which was in design and public policy. We talked about SAM. SAM was specific, achievable, and measurable, right? And, you know, I think part of what I love hearing you say is to really embrace the impact of positive emotional success, right? Positive emotional success allows us to actually say, okay, I can do this again. And if we don't give ourselves the chance to sort of feel like we can have that success, then we're likely not to do it again. And it's much harder to reboot sort of something than to sort of take another sort of smaller incremental step. I forgot, it was like David Letterman or somebody who was basically like, I wrote a joke every day. And as long as I wrote one joke every day and I never, you know, and he's like, maybe you can miss one day, but you can never miss 2 days. And I'm just like, okay, it just doesn't matter if it's just one breath.
Yep.
An intentional breath today that I can sort of, I know that tomorrow I can keep going.
That's it. And there's two really important lessons in that. One is that every practice that we decide to include in our life is accumulative, whether it's not healthy or healthy. So everything accumulates, right? So if like we're taking that bite, those like, oh, I'm just going to have 3 cookies tonight, right? Versus the one, right? I'm just going to give myself the treat. I'll just have 3 because like, you know, whatever, I'm feeling crazy. And then you do that every night. It's cumulative. Like, you know, when you're like, oh, I feel like crap, you know, a month later, it's like, well, there's a way that we got there. I mean, I've gotten myself there. I get it. Right. So there are healthy habits that serve us in the direction we've chosen to go. And then there are habits that don't serve us in the direction that we want to go. And it's all accumulative. And I just feel so lucky to have been able to see this in life, right? Because I think it's very theoretical. It's like, well, you know what? I don't want to sit today for 5 minutes because I don't feel good. I have a lot of feelings and I really don't want to feel them right now. Right? Well, that choice is cumulative. Right? And so they really do add up. Sitting, meditation, any spiritual practice, it's the spiritual gym. Like, you will feel different in a month. You will feel different in 3 months. And it doesn't need to take a lot.
And I think that that's the tension, right? Is between that self-discipline and then the surrender, right? We've talked a lot about this, is that between self-discipline and surrender is our flow state. And I was thinking about this earlier today, that in some ways the opposite of surrender is ego and willpower. And I have definitely guilty of like, oh, I am just going to will myself through this self-discipline, right? Like that was that 6 months of like daily meditation was like, it was self-discipline and willpower. And that was a very different experience of self-discipline and surrender, because I think that, and you can actually correct me since you're the trained psychologist here, but my understanding is that they call willpower in psychology ego deplenishment, or sort of it basically, because willpower is really good for short-term goals, terrible for long-term goals. And it's like a diminishing sort of energy. So the more you use it, the less of it you have. Whereas in some ways, if you take it from a healthy standpoint, right, gratitude is a regenerative energy, meaning the more you use it, the more you have of it. And so it's just fascinating how the discipline or the method is really just one side of that equation. And what we put on the other side of that equation really makes a difference in how successful we're going to be over time.
I love that, Omar. And I think it really sets us up for this like second piece is expectation of our practice, you know, and we all have some sort of preconceived notion around what it's supposed to look like.
I would love to hear from like, how do folks manage, this is like slightly off topic, but when my wife and I first got married, one of the things that we learned early on was like management of expectations. Like as long as we manage expectations, we could kind of make it through whatever needed to get through. And I think habits is I've never applied it in that way. I love that, Oakley. Like, how do we manage our expectations around this habit? And how do people do that here? I would love to, hear from you. Anybody just want to share their habits or their expectations, what they've learned?
We got powerhouses in the room today.
I know people have tried these things. What worked, what not worked?
Marilyn.
Well, I tried very, very hard not to have expectations. And I know that goes against the theory of setting goals and the law of attraction. But for me, if I set expectations, I tend to set them too high. And then I end up failing or developing a resentment. And so I like to kind of say, this is what I want to do and aim to achieve that. It's not necessarily setting the bar too low. It's just not setting it so high. And then I've stumbled onto things that I just joyfully love doing. And when I run across one of those, then that's easy to incorporate into my daily routine. And one of them is breathing, doing breathing exercises or meditative exercises that involve breathing, getting outside, looking at the stars, works wonders. Anything that will make me smile is worth doing over and over again. And I don't really have to have an expectation of how well I'm going to do it. It pretty much just happens, like that crazy dog. I'm crazy. And he's big enough to knock me over too. So
he looks like a little sweetie.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying. Thank you for that, because what I really hear in that is you're just really open to receive, and you trust your knowing, like, this is something that makes me happy, and I just allow myself to receive whatever the gift is in that.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, right on.
That's in some ways almost harder, I think, and because it's, to what I hear with no expectation is a surrender, and a surrendering is in some ways a more abundant trust. Like when you think about a method or a practice or a discipline, in some ways that's a crutch, right? Like I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes today, because that's then sort of like, I'm going to make this specific, achievable, measurable, right? And then you're judging yourself as to whether you hit that mark or you exceed it. You're like, I'm amazing, I did it for 30 minutes, right? Like then you're creating all this like crazy judgment, good and bad, right? Healthy or unhealthy pride on that spectrum, versus that, what does that sort of surrender kind of look like? Like that's in some ways even harder, I think.
Mm.
Well, it's a surrender and an acceptance, sort of an openness, willing. Obviously, I'm in recovery because I'm quoting all of this stuff.
Not obvious, but
it's
yeah.
not obvious.
But that's what it is. It's an openness and a willingness and an acceptance and surrender. And it just makes for incredibly joyful moments. And then you end up being happy.
Mm. Mm. You know, and it comes back to just feeling deeply connected, like giving ourselves the opportunity to feel deeply connected to that authentic moment, whatever it is, whatever it is.
Other folks have just experiences they would like to share around habits and what has worked, what hasn't worked. What would they like to sort of explore further? Amy?
Yeah.
I think that I sort of, it was interesting to hear you talk, Marilyn, is I think I look at everything sort of as an adventure that's going to turn out well, and then try to take it all on moment to moment. And I do a lot of reflecting, I think, afterward. So I think I try to be open to new adventures, whatever that is. And I do have a mantra that I use a lot, which I got from a woman named Alana Cavalli. And it's, this is what is happening now.
It smells amazing.
Sorry.
That's
I'm
what's
taking
happening
a
now.
pie for my son.
That's what's happening now.
That's what's happening now.
This is what's happening now.
Yeah, that's right.
So I try to remind myself of that. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. So my dear friend, he's like a brother to me. This guy, Steven, we've known each other for 20 years, and we've been walking the same path together for a very long time, a sort of spiritual community. And, you know, we just love to get into trouble together and, you know, take conversations as far as they can go and stuff like that. And he really moved into this experience, this sort of like conscious experience through his meditation practices, and where he really got the, and forgive me for these words, I feel like they're not the most accessible, but I'm just going to say it how it occurs, where he got really, really clear about the divinity in everything. Even the obscene, like even that, he really went into this sort of, I would say like white tantric. We refer to tantric in this country a lot as like sexual practice, but that's not the origins obviously at all. And really the dark and the light and the divinity and all of it. And he found this place of liberation through this sort of experience, you know, that actually held as quite a state for him, that he then nurtured and stuff like that. And he had this similar mantra, Amy. He would say whatever arose, and he goes, and this also, referring to like, this is also it, right? Like there's no it to arrive to, there's no place to arrive. Like this is the divinity, the well of
right here.
And that's right here, right here. So no matter what arose, and also this.
I like that. And also this.
And also this.
I also would love to add that I feel like I have been trying to incorporate a gratitude practice for years now. Like, and I would be like, oh shoot, I forgot to do it, or I forgot to write that down, or whatever. But I find this app is helpful, and it just is much more in my consciousness. So I really deeply appreciate it, because after I reflect, I can look back and be grateful, and it has helped me. So I cherish that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, that was when we created it. I wanted it to be as simple as possible. And this sort of idea that this was the original wearable technology, right? For thousands of years, people have literally just been counting their blessings. It didn't need to be hard. It didn't need to be fancy. This was a physical reminder. The routine was to count your thanks, and the reward was a healthier and happier you, right? And part of that was being part of something bigger. So thank you so much. But I also love what you were talking about. So the mantra was just about noticing what is. And Oakley and I, in the prep, we're talking a little bit about grace. And I just came across this definition of grace, that it is what is unadorned. It's the original state. And if you think about what is, then all you're doing, you're doing what Marilyn is doing naturally, which is that you're not overlaying your own expectations of what something should be, ought to be, could be, would have been, should have been, could have been. It's just what is. And when we can appreciate what is, it's unadorned. And then all of a sudden we're living in a place of grace.
So you answered your own question about surrender being hard. It's just entering a state of grace.
That's all.
I wanted to share something.
Please.
Okay. This always helps me remember when I'm trying to decide if it's a good habit or bad habit. I heard that a good habit is hard to keep. A bad habit is easy to keep. And it helps me distinguish between the two if I'm undecided or wanting to do the bad habit.
Thank you. That's really great. I'm like with it right now. I'm like, ooh, why is that?
Yeah, I'm totally, you caught me off guard there, Teresa. Usually I've got like really good quick comebacks. I'm like, this one's interesting, because I kind of want to resist it. Like part of me wants to say no, but I'm wondering, why is that? Why is a habit good or bad, and what makes a habit easier or harder? And I don't know. I think, Marilyn, you were talking a lot about joy. And
the enjoyment of the habit, if you actually are enjoying it. But you could, bad habits can be enjoyable too.
Right.
But I just happened to hook up with some things that brought me joy, so they were easy. But for someone else, when I tell them about it, they go, there's no way I could do that. Absolutely no way. And so it just happens to be something that brings me great joy. And it's easy for me to do. See, I get up at like 2 o'clock in the morning and I go out and see the stars. And I'm just incredibly turned into the tiniest, most insignificant thing in the world, standing under the greatest amount of awesomeness, because I live in the country and it's like blackout. So it's amazing. And then I can spend 20 minutes out there doing body movement and meditating and being thankful. And the thing is, if I don't do it, I notice it immediately. My day later on is kind of going, oh, this is just not as good a day as normal. So yeah, when you have a practice that you can keep up, because it's joyful for me.
Amen. We keep bringing back joy, don't we, Omar?
I love it. It's everything. I think part of why I love joy is that in some ways you can't manufacture it, right? Like it's just there, and you receive it, and it's all of a sudden you're experiencing it and I think that just goes so counter to sort of our culture, which is, what can I do? What can I create? It's all about sort of that something versus just sort of being still and just being like, whoa, that caught me off by surprise. Teresa, your quote, can you say that one more time about the good versus bad habit?
Yeah,
I want to really digest that.
A good habit is hard to keep. A bad habit is easy to keep.
I don't know. I have
I'm ready to challenge
resistance. Yeah, please, okay, because I'm these feel like and I we love you, Teresa. You know, so but these feel like fighting words. So
Yeah.
I get it. Let's break it open.
Let's break this
really
open.
great. Let's break this open. So every habit has a reward attached to it. Right? There's a payoff to every habit. Some are unconscious and others are conscious. Usually the bad ones, quote unquote, it's not really a bad one. There are no bad and good habits. Can we just say that real quick? Like, we just have habits. And they take us to places that we consciously choose, or they take us to unconscious places that we haven't chosen. Right? So if we have a habit that's unconscious, it's usually, I want to say it's like brushing our teeth or something, but that's not the example we're looking for. It's like, it's the thing that we don't have any say over. And those are usually the vices, because we've developed them in an unconscious space. Right? So we do the thing that makes us feel better immediately, whether it's like drinking or whatever it is, eating. I mean, we could keep going. There's so many. We all have like experienced some version of something, right? And the immediate gratification is relief from the suffering, but it doesn't actually heal anything. Right? So it's just the suppression of it all. Right? And that's the easy one because it's unconscious. Anything unconscious is easy because you don't have to freaking think about it. Right? But if we decide to make a habit conscious, well, now we have to engage ourselves. And that effort is a little bit of a heavy lift in the beginning until we retrain ourselves into it becoming these healthy new habits becoming unconscious.
I think you hit it for me at least. So
my stab at it
was, to me, the definition between what is healing versus what is suffering or what is broken, right? And if a bad habit is what creates more brokenness versus a healthy habit which creates more healing. And I think I'm gonna lean with you on this one, Oakley. I think sometimes when we're in the thick of it, and it is really hard to kind of get that sort of momentum going, doing what's healthy or what's quote unquote right is absolutely harder. But I think it's called a flywheel. I don't even know what it is. I think it's just, it's probably like a literal thing, but just the expression of a flywheel is like, once you get something going, it actually becomes easier. Here we go. In sports, when you play basketball, let's just say, learning to dribble, learning to shoot is harder. But the more you practice, the better you get. The better you get, the more fun you have. And so then therefore you practice more. And so at first, and this is sort of like a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, if you're not feeling the reward of shooting the basket, dribbling, then you're less likely to practice. And then it's going to become harder. And then it's going to be harder to make that basket or dribble or whatever. And so I think that flywheel effect is really important when we think about habits and where we find success or not. I'm also thinking about this as a father and my daughters, and what does it take to get them motivated?
Right on. And this brings us all back to the little things, right? Like it is. So I want to share on this topic, Teresa, also, because this is so awesome. Thank you for bringing this up, because this is amazing. This is the majority of our country does feel like this. Like, oh my God, like good habits, those are hard. I mean, I'm watching my fiance train some new habits for himself. And he's like, oh, this is hard. Like it takes that muscle, right? So I get it too, right? I totally get it. It takes a little bit of will sometimes, but also just the commitment to the bigger thing, right? We have to look and tie it to that like bigger thing, right? So for example, then I'll tell this story. For example, everybody in January, right? Like the majority of our nation is like, I'm going to get a gym membership. Right? It's
new year, new you.
It's new you. 2021, new you. And It's when gym memberships skyrocket and the gyms are, you can look at the stats and the gyms are packed. And by the end of February, the gyms are back to exactly where they were the year before. Why is that? Because people attach that their goal is to lose weight. Their goal, guys, that's not going to get you out of bed when you feel like crap. You have to tie losing weight to what it makes you feel, to what it creates for you in your life. Well, then I get to like play with, my nieces and my nephews and not get tired. I get to like go for that long walk with my friends and not like feel whatever, I get to wake up with like vigor and my eyes wide open, so we have to tie it to the life it creates for us versus the immediate gratification, because the immediate gratification is not big enough. And I don't know if that's a bummer or not, but like, them's just sort of the facts about brain neurology, like I always have to tie what I'm up to the way it ultimately creates this like extraordinary experience in my life for me.
I think this is, we've gotten somewhere here with Theresa's beautiful sort of challenge dilemma framing, because I'm just thinking about my two daughters, and I have one who just loves capoeira and she loves dancing. She loves moving. She does handstands all night in our house. And because she does handstands all night, she gets better and better at capoeira, which has lots of flipping and moving around. My older daughter, I can't get her to join a sport to save my life, right? And you're talking to somebody who played basketball, volleyball, soccer. I swam. I played varsity sports in college, right? So, and I'm trying to, be a good dad. I'm like, I don't care what sport, honey, like just any sport, right? But I'm definitely judgmental, so it's not actually true, because she's like, archery, and I'm like, okay, we did archery for a while, and then she's like, sailing, horseback riding. I was like, can you do something that we can afford, right? Like, yeah, how about that? Like, maybe put some framing on it. And so it's been interesting to really find what actually motivates her, right? And that's what you were talking about, Oakley, was that if you're just dieting to lose weight, that's ego, that's willpower. We've already said that that's a diminishing energy, right?
In the long term.
In the long term, right?
Will is good in the immediate, but long term, right. It's the moment in January. Right. But we're talking about February 29th, right. 28th.
And so it's been interesting to then sort of like really deeply listen to her. And I think for us here, what does it mean to really listen deeply within to what is that joy for you? And what is then the healthy habit that's going to actually bring that joy to life? And so I think that to me is like what the proposition that you're bringing, Theresa, is then that's the question that's really being raised, is what is that real joy that I'm trying to find, and how am I creating the space for it? This was beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, will you give us another breath?
Let's all just take a moment. Take a deep inhale. Really hold that breath at the top, and then exhale. And just allow your whole body to just sink into that breath experience. Let everything go in the mind and just give all of yourself to that breath. And then come back.
What I love is that in less than 50 minutes, we've probably taken now 3-4 intentional breaths, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine if you just did that once an hour, twice an hour, not worrying about carving out 20 minutes or whatever. And you're just like, you know what? Top of the hour, I'm going to take an intentional breath. Mm-hmm. Just one. Don't overthink it. And I bet, at the risk of betting, you'll do more than one, right? Like that's the funniest thing, right? Is that, on habits, if we just do one, we're like, oh, that was easy. I can do another one. And then all of a sudden you're in the space where it's just part of your life. And if you go deep into meditation, and, Oakley knows this better than I do, but like everything that I've read, everything that I've practiced, it gets to this point of like choiceless awareness, where it's actually not about the sitting. It's just about how are you moving throughout your day. And this is, you know, Amy, you talk about like the gratitude practice and that pausing to notice good. All of a sudden, when you pause to notice good, then it becomes easier to pause and notice what's challenging, right? And if we want, because part of it, then all of a sudden, if we can notice what's challenging, then we're just in that place of what is, which is what we say, what is. It's the place of grace. And so whether something is good or whether something is bad, and whether something's easy or whether something's challenging, if all of a sudden we're coming at it from this place of grace, then it's all the time, right? It's the Thich Nhat Hanh created enlightenment so that we could just appreciate the ordinary.
I think I'm coming up with this like summary takeaway from Teresa's offering here. I just had this insight. I was like, new habits, we label them as hard, but good habits are hard, right? But I think actually good habits are new, and new registers as requiring conscious awareness and a tiny bit of effort. And then eventually we get used to them and they just become part of our life. But I like there's a little bit of a moment that we can recognize in a new habit where it's just a tiny bit like, ooh, that feels different. That feels new. And sometimes new feels hard.
Or new can feel like going to a new city and you're just traveling and you're exploring and it's all like, whoa, right? When you go travel to a new city, you can focus on maybe the logistics of the train or the planes or the buses or whatever. Or you can just be like, whoa, I'm just traveling and I've never seen these sites before. And so even our relationship to new is something that we can have a choice with, right? Totally. Like, how do we want to focus on the challenges of all the travel logistics, or we just want to experience the moment? And often, I would argue, most people get really excited about traveling. And then the relationship to the new is not scary, an opportunity to explore.
I love it. And I want to bring us back to choosing your joy also, like just being authentic about what brings you joy. So I'd love to share a little vignette about how I ended up in my meditation practice.
Please.
Okay.
I am curious about this.
Okay. So I was curious about stillness and meditation as a kid, but I never had formal training. And my formal training came later in my life. And there was about a year and a half, 18 months that preceded my formal training. And I went to a talk. And I honestly can't remember the woman's name at this moment, but my mom took me. She said, we're going to this talk. There's this cool like medium or psychic. She had been acknowledged sort of to carry divine mother energy. She was a bit of a teacher. She was from Europe. She was a white woman. Not that that matters, but it was just like, she didn't fit any sort of spiritual mold. She had 2 kids. She was sort of like an enlightened mom, right? And which is beautiful because that's what the world needs right now. And so we went to this talk and she was really into angels. And I had no relationship consciously at that time with communing with spirit guides or anything like that. And through this angel work, she got really into the concept of flames. And there's a whole study about flames on the planet and colors of the flame, and all the different colors mean different things and have different elements, very esoteric, sort of, outside of the box teachings. And I just sat there, I just listened. I was open, I was, just listening. And I am an artist. And so what really resonated with me, I had this curiosity about the colors. I was like, what do you mean colors have like a quality? She was like, well, blue is like Archangel Michael's blue flame, and it's the quality of will. And she assigned all of these colors and these qualities and these flames with sort of an archangel or an angel, whatever. And she had a packet, and it was all laid out like yellow, green, blue, red, purple, violet, all the things. And my sort of organizational artist went nuts. It's like how I feel about oils, right? I'm like, wait, what? They all have qualities and they all have different scents. Like there's something about my brain that loves the sort of organizational aspect of that, right? And it was stimulating because I wasn't at 19 being asked to just sort of override my feelings as, you know, a hormonal teenager, and also witness my thoughts, which took a lot of training and a lot of grit, which I didn't have at that point, right? I didn't have that discipline, but I did have the curiosity about these flames and these colors and these qualities. So this woman had a meditation practice assigned to this whole system. And it was 5 minutes. And she invited us to close our eyes and systematically, over the course of weeks, get acquainted with each vibrational quality and color. And I was like, yeah, I'm in. Right. And I did not think twice about it. I didn't worry that it was weird. I just didn't care. I just was so fascinated by this invitation to get to know something more deeply, because I was also very energetic and very like energetically sensitive. You know, I had the sensitivity of being able to feel different qualities of energy. So it really hit the mark, and I didn't make it more special or precious than that. And I had a journal, and for 365 days, I spent 5 minutes every day communing with one of these energetic flames and understanding how it felt in my body. And that was it. It was a full city tour. I had no idea what I was gonna find. I didn't have any expectation. I just knew that my responsibility was to sit quietly and to breathe and to open my little packet and say, oh, today I'm pulling in pink, Camuel, Archangel, Divine Love, and I'm just gonna feel that. Guys, I had no background on this, right? Like I didn't grow up in an angel household. Like that's not right. So I just was curious. And then I had all these little boxes next to all the lines, and I could check off like my accomplishment. So there was this reward of like satisfaction, but there was an experience that was building. There was an attunement that I was training without even knowing it. Just because I was curious, and it brought me this sort of sense of joy. That was it. That was all that I got. I was like, it was sort of curious. There was a sense of joy. I really got rewarded by being like checking off the advent calendar of it, you know? And over a year, it built the most extraordinary sense of discipline in my body and my nervous system. And then what opened up is I met my next level teacher, who's now my teacher today. And I was able to begin to dive in because I had this sort of like prerequisite course of discipline that just made my next level of training not scary. Like, so I was even more curious because I had built confidence a little, right? So I just want to put that out there, everybody, because that was when I was 19 and I'm 40. And I started with 5 minutes. And if anyone had told me to sit for an hour, I would have told them to like good luck. I just, no way, Jose, like, no. So please, the invitation is find the thing that really does sort of tickle your fancy, that sort of does bring a little sense of joy and a little bit of curiosity. And then it'll be enough, you know, make it achievable.
The word that you shared, which was a beautiful story overall, but attunement really resonated. And I feel like joy is the little alarm that shows when we're attuned. And so when we can actually find that little point, then it actually becomes easier to get back there. We're like, oh, right. You know, and it's like you create that sort of facial recognition. You're like, oh, it's easier to see that thing again because you become more familiar with it. Amazing.
That's it. And joy is our natural state, right? There's no baby that's born depressed. Like It's a natural state that lives in us. And coming back to your share on innocence earlier, right? I don't know if that was that today or
That was like, I
today?
don't know. It wasn't today. Grace was today.
Okay. Everything's collapsing into one quantum field for me
Love
right
innocence,
now.
though. That's my Enneagram happy place is innocence.
Innocence, that's it. And that joy is tied with innocence. And there's such a deep freedom in giving that to ourselves.
Amazing. I mean, the full circle on breath, for me, having 6 years ago tried it very vigorously with lots of discipline and willpower, to this summer in June doing this 7-day fast and meditation. And as Oakley knows, like by day 5, I had like laser beams shooting out of my forehead. It was like, whoa, nobody told me meditation could be like this. This is amazing, right? Like if somebody had pitched me, you can have laser beams shooting out of your forehead if you'd like, just meditate. I'm like, okay, sign me up. But that's not how it was introduced to me. But it is pretty magical, right? Like that place of attunement and that surrender and that sort of serendipity that is possible. And so I think that's also just giving ourselves some room to breathe. Mm-hmm. Boom. See that?
Full circle.
Full circle. Oh my goodness.
Great. So let's all just take one more breath together. Just drop in. How much can you let go of when you breathe? How much can you bring your attention to your breath and your body? Just relax your brain. Relax the mind. And just ever so gently return. Beautiful. So as we focus on the little things, you're welcome. As we focus on the little things, allow it to be easy and allow it to bring a sense of pleasure, right? Like, give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to just have it be filled with ease and just that little sliver of pleasure. That's okay. That's beautiful. And that accumulates, by the way.
I'd love to just hear how folks, as we check out, I know at the beginning, we talked about some of the heaviness that maybe we might be feeling or not, where are you now? Feel free to share in the chat or access your mic.
Well, I felt good at the beginning. I feel great now. So.
Woo! Thank you.
And I thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you so much for everything you brought today. So valuable.
For me, after a very stressful month with my sister-in-law and her passing, I was looking forward to this, and I can see why, because I just feel better.
Thank you. Anybody else like to share as we just check out here?
I'll share. It's been a while.
Hi, Tricia.
Hi. I'm just, I feel peaceful right now.
You can hear it in your voice. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, Amy.
I keep freezing. You guys keep freezing, so I don't know if you'll be able to hear me, but a friend of mine was ill this week, and there was a message, an email that I read, and they said that he was inhaling, exhaling 30 times per minute. Mm-hmm. And I think most people, it's like you can do like 4 to 7 or something, but but what you said earlier, Omar, about the spiritus, I feel like it's somehow his spirit was leaving his body, you know? Anyway, that came across when we were doing the breath. I thought of that.
Thank you for sharing and just being open.
Yeah, thank you.
Any last shares?
Peace all, y'all. Check.
Thank you.
Catch you later.
Take care.
I don't leave yet.
Well, I'm excited about continuing this conversation around the little things and the topics. I think we're covering food, posture, and there's one more. Remember what the last one is?
I don't know.
Little things.
Little things.
Cool.
Something.
A surprise.
A surprise, yeah. It's an email. It's a surprise for all of us. We'll read it.
Intention would be good.
What's that?
Intention would be good.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's something that I tend to forget. You know, first thing in the morning, I'm doing all of my happiness stuff, and I forget to set my intention. You know, I have to remind myself a couple hours later to.
Right on.
Right on. Definitely jump into that topic. Dunzo. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Powerhouse night. Our love with you.
Peace.
Thank you.
Peace.